Part 1, The Mirror's Gaze. The old mansion at the edge of town had always been a place of mystery, avoided by most who valued their peace of mind. It had stood for centuries, weathered by time, its windows like blank eyes staring out at the world, but it wasn't the creaking floorboards or the endless rooms that kept people away. It was the mirrors. Every room in the mansion was filled with them. Tall mirrors, small mirrors, oval and square, some so old the glass was tinted with age. They hung on the walls like silent witnesses, reflecting the dusty corridors and dim light. No one knew why there were so many. Some believed they were relics of the house's former owner, a reclusive collector who disappeared long ago without a trace. But for Clara, the mirrors were a challenge. Clara was a photographer, and her obsession with capturing the eerie beauty of forgotten places had brought her to the mansion. When she first heard the stories, she laughed them off. Ghosts, haunted reflections, strange faces appearing in the glass. None of it scared her. In fact, it intrigued her. She thought there might be something special about the place, something she could capture with her camera that no one else had dared to. So, one foggy afternoon, she packed her gear and set off for the mansion, ignoring the warnings from the townspeople. The large iron gate was rusted shut, but she squeezed through a gap, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path as she approached the front door. The moment Clara stepped inside, she felt the weight of the house's silence. It was oppressive, like the air itself was watching her. Still, she pushed forward, her curiosity driving her. As she moved from room to room, snapping photos of the peeling wallpaper and cobwebbed chandeliers, she couldn't help but notice the mirrors. They were everywhere, catching glimpses of her as she passed by, their surfaces gleaming dully in the dim light. But something about them seemed off. The first time she noticed it, she was in the grand hallway, a large mirror at the far end catching her reflection. She walked toward it, camera in hand, admiring the frame's intricate design. But as she reached it, she stopped cold. Her reflection didn't match her movements. For a split second, it seemed as though the Clara in the mirror was still walking, even after she had stopped. She blinked, shook her head. "Just tired," she whispered to herself, brushing it off as a trick of the light. But a sliver of unease slid into her mind. She moved on, but it kept happening. In every room, the mirrors seemed wrong. Sometimes her reflection lingered a moment too long after she looked away. Sometimes it seemed as though something was moving just out of the corner of her eye. She would turn her head, but nothing would be there, just the empty room behind her. The mansion was playing tricks on her, she told herself. Old places did that. The mirrors were warped, the glass aged. It was all explainable, logical. But then she reached the second floor. The bedroom at the end of the hall was enormous, dominated by an antique four-poster bed draped in dusty linens. Across from the bed was a massive floor-length mirror, easily 6 feet tall with an ornate golden frame. The glass was cleaner than the others, almost as though it had been polished recently. Clara stood before it, raising her camera to take a shot, but something in the reflection made her pause. There, just behind her, was a figure. Pale, barely visible, but definitely there. It stood in the shadows near the doorway, its form flickering as though it wasn't entirely solid. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she spun around, expecting to see someone standing there. But the room was empty. Swallowing hard, she turned back to the mirror. The figure was gone. She stared at her reflection, her breath shaky, and for a moment everything seemed normal, but then, ever so slowly, her reflection smiled. A wide, twisted grin that didn't belong to her. Clara's blood ran cold as she watched her mirror self, still grinning, even as her real face remained frozen in terror. With trembling hands, she lowered her camera, backing away from the mirror. She wanted to run, to leave the mansion and never look back, but her feet felt glued to the floor. The air in the room thickened, heavy with an oppressive, malevolent presence, then the mirror. Clara raised a hand and beckoned, her smile widening into something unnatural, something hungry. A loud creak came from behind her, and before she could react, the door to the room slammed shut. The mirror went dark. Clara was trapped. to be continued.